Hey everyone, welcome to the Underswell. I'm Derek Sabori. Thanks for being here. Three, two, one, and then we're live. We're live. Hey Monica, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Derek?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Happy Friday.
Oh my
Ready
gosh.
for the weekend?
Yeah, exactly. To Friday.
Yay to Friday. How are things in your neck of the woods as you head into the weekend? We've had a lot of rain over here in California on the West Coast. Give me a little insight over there.
Yeah, no, it's just cold. Winter is arriving, and I'm not a cold person. So for me, this is like the time when I kind of hibernate.
Yeah, you better be ready. You got to buckle up and be ready.
Exactly. So yeah, I've been told that it's going to be a very cold winter, but which is good because we want to kill off the mosquitoes, but it's not good for me.
And you're in the DC area, is that right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, over here on the West Coast, things are good. We're a lot more mild over here. So I'll be thinking
no
of you.
wildfires, I hope.
Yeah, no wildfires right now. We're just in kind of torrential rain situation, but that's nothing we can't get past. So
yeah, that's good.
Well, any plans for the weekend? Do you got anything going on?
So we're doing a Friendsgiving, an early Friendsgiving tomorrow, which I'm excited about, to see some of my friends and connect with them and, hear what's happening. Some of them were in the government and others, most of my network is in environmental fields. So it's going to be a good time to kind of reconnect and see where everyone is. Yeah,
and see what's going on. We're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
Well, just for our listeners, I'm here today with Monika Kumar, sustainability advisor at the brand Ichcha, which means wish, right?
A wish, yes.
A wish. We're going to dive in and hear about that because that's a company and a brand that you're running with your sisters, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. You're a former sustainability finance pro at the World Bank. Before we dive in, though, Ichcha, like I said, is a family-run business. It's a boutique brand with a vision to create conscious textiles. You're preserving the art of hand-printed and hand-woven goods. You want to tell us a little bit about the company before I dive into your role?
Yeah, sure. So, it was one of those dream projects. My family and I were very close. And when we were growing up, we were like, we should work together. Although the three of us have totally different career paths and interests. My older sister went into computer science because she was the eldest and had to provide for the family, right? So like she did the responsible thing and went into like a traditional field.
Yeah.
I went into environment because I'm the middle child. I could get away with it, right? And my younger sister showed an interest in art. And so I was like fighting for her. I was like, you need to go and be an artist. So the three of us had like totally different paths, but we wanted to see a way to connect it. And like about 15 years ago, my oldest, this was like when the 2008 crash happened, she left her job because she's like, I'm done. I'm done being the responsible one. And she started figuring out what she wanted and met up with my younger sister, who was at that time doing masters in textiles in London. And they started brainstorming and they called me up and they're like, hey, we're starting a business. You in? And I was like, wait, is it a sustainable business? And they're like, yeah, we're working with artisans in India. So it's all about helping communities thrive and making sure that we sustain the arts and crafts, the traditional art and craft of India. So, it is sustainable in its foundation.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And I was like, I have done my job.
Yes, right. My work here is done. Count me in.
My work here is done. Let's do this. So it was about 15 years ago we started this company. But along the way, it's been an interesting journey because we're doing this on our own. Like our studio is in our parents' basement still. And, now with like the whole tariffs issue and stuff, it's interesting to tackle the challenges that we're facing at the moment.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking.
Yeah, you bet. And what's interesting, 15 years, that's a great run. You guys are obviously you're doing great. The website's got a whole bunch of great products on there. But as a small business, as a small family-run business, like if you're dealing with tariff issues and all of a sudden it becomes a little more complex maybe than you originally thought and had hoped, things were probably going so well until wait, what? Until it's not. Now you got to deal with other things, right?
Right. And we need to reassess, because one of our founding values was we want to make sustainable fashion accessible to people. So you shouldn't be paying $200 for a top just because it's made sustainably, right? And so we've really worked at pricing our products for accessibility for people to be able to afford it. And now we're coming across this conversation around, well, do we price it so that our margins stay the same, or do we price it which cuts into our margins? And as a small business where, like both my sisters work on this full time, I've continued to keep a job on the side in case, as we were growing this business, in case we needed to fund some money into it.
Smart.
So I've been a silent partner most of my time there. But, now that this field is becoming, the environmental field is really coming under attack, that's no longer our backup plan. So we're having some very serious conversations right now.
Wow. Okay. So we'll dive in. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about just sort of your time in sustainability, and just sort of these issues that you're dealing with the company. Just that seed that you planted with sustainable fashion being so expensive. This idea of like, well, it ends up being expensive because, there are good reasons that it is. And the flip side is when it's not expensive, it's usually because the scale is so massive, right? So what an interesting, I guess. I
think it's a scale, but it's also because people don't factor in a livable wage, or how it's basically externalizing their environmental impacts, right? So what's happening to your water waste or your emissions and stuff. So people are just kind of saying, oh, somebody else is taking care of all that issues. We can price it low and cheap.
Yeah, if we don't account for those things, then they just don't exist, right? We just make them go away, and somebody else will pay for those, which means we all pay for those things. All right. Well, I want to give a little context to the audience, before we dive too deep into all of that. I guess, besides work, paint a picture of who you are. What do you do personally? What do you like to do personally these days? What keeps you busy outside of work right now?
Yeah, good question, because I just got a photo of my baby nephew who's like 9 months old, and he just learned how to hold his milk bottle. So I'm very excited to go back and see him and how he's progressed in the past few weeks since I have not seen him. That's what's keeping me busy. Watching this little tiny human come into this world and push our boundaries, right? As he's exploring, it's really interesting. As he just walks around and he explores everything, and you have to stop and see what he sees because you take it for granted now.
Yeah.
So that's keeping me busy. And then the other thing that's, again, like I said, the market right now is just so depressing, interesting, challenging, that I've been focusing a bit on upskilling and taking the time to really take a breath, because I've been in this field for over 20 years now, and it's changed so much. So where are we now? Where do the challenges lie? Where are we supposed to be pushing the agenda forward? Those type of things, those type of questions are what I'm tackling right now in conversations with people, and trying to see the types of skills and networks that fulfill the impact that I want to create. And when you say, who are you? I do want to introduce myself as, I'm an environmentalist, and through, I feel like that's, most people are like, oh, I am a human. And I'm like, no, I'm an environmentalist. I've been an environmentalist since I was 15. And, that's what defines me as a person. So when I think about the things that I do as projects on the side, it's always like, how do I have an impact? And that, question remains in the back of my mind always.
Wow. Yeah. That's a bit of a burden to carry around though, right? When you're always like, what's the impact here? If I make this decision, how does it impact the bigger picture? It's a really thoughtful way to live though. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I know we are supposed to go over this question around sustainability, and I wanted to do like a visual exercise because I feel like this is how I live and think every single day. If you don't mind,
No.
if we start with that, because I do, again, this is foundational, right?
Yeah.
When people say what is sustainability and what does working in this field look like right now, well, here, let's start this. Like, take a moment, just take a deep breath and look down at what you're wearing.
Okay.
Right? You have a shirt on. I have a shirt on. Now think about how it was made. There was fiber involved, which is most probably harvested using, like, there's seed, soil, water, sun, all these resources that were utilized to create the fiber that created your shirt.
Yeah.
And then there were hands involved. Somebody who went and harvested it, or whether using a tractor or a sickle, harvested it, wove it into a product, stitched it, and then there was an exchange made, right? You went and you bought it. There was an exchange made, which created the economy. So really, sustainability looks at how we do this in the most efficient and effective manner, right? The definition of sustainability is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. But everything, the thing that you wear, the thing that you're on right now, the thing that you're eating, drinking, anything that you have in your life is all about how effectively can we utilize or create this product in order to ensure that not only now, but we sustain that for the longest time period. And many indigenous communities talk about 7 generations. So think about when that 7th generation is going to be around. So I just wanted to set that stage because I feel like we talk about sustainability as a separate thing. It's not. It is in everything we do. And it's so integrated in our decision making. Because if you've looked at the Global Footprint Network, they come out with this announcement of how, at what point, on what date within the year, we have used up all the resources of the planet.
Yeah, Earth Overshoot Day, right?
Yes. Yeah. This year was July 24.
Oh, ouch. Ouch.
July 24, we used
running
up
a
all
deficit.
the resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're now living on a 1.8 equivalent of Earths, right? And that's scary. Yeah. So talking about my nephew, like, what's he going to see? Is he going to see glaciers when he grows up? Is he going to be able to see some of those endangered species that we see still? Or breathe the air, right? So I do think that sustainability is a part and parcel of everything we do and everything we see. It's just the people who are empowered to talk about it, they're like us, right? We decided we want to do this as a profession, and we want to make sure that we integrate it into every single aspect and decision making.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying though is so true. And that the picture you painted, the visualization, right, going back to seed and soil. I mean, then there are every stage of the value chain, right? From then we go to processing, like I said, to manufacturing, to consumer use, to selling, to distributing, use, end of life. Where does it go? But I always like the visualization that I always like to paint too for my clients is that in each of those, I call them columns, each of those stages, they're, like you said, environmental and social impacts that you can just dive into and unpack. So there's so much to keep us busy. And that's why, though, it needs to be embedded, like we said, into every aspect of business. And it shouldn't just be a separate little department of 2 or 3 people that are managing it. Everybody needs to have their eyes on it and be doing things in the best way they can. So that's really good. And I really like the idea, though, that you've got your nephew and that it puts it in new perspective. It really puts that definition that you mentioned into practice and reality, because now you're going, oh, that's right. There is this little human that really is a special part of my life now that I'm really looking out for. So that's nice.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Exactly. Well, you said it, Monika. You're a sustainability and international development expert with more than 20 years of experience in designing and advising on sustainability and climate strategies. You've been managing complex multi-stakeholder initiatives and translating global sustainability disclosures and climate risk standards, all of those things like the UN SDGs, GRI, UNPRI, all the sea of acronyms that we have, really, turning those into actionable programs and trainings. You gave us a little picture of sort of what that means and entails, but I would like to know from you just sort of, you've mentioned kind of tough times, interesting times, but maybe from from the 30,000 foot level, what do you feel like is, as you talk to your friends and colleagues, what's the latest in this space? Do you feel good about it? Are things going well? Is it really tough? What's everybody saying? Give us an opinion here.
It's interesting. I'm like, when you asked me how my day was going, let me tell you how my day is going.
Right? I want to hear it. We're here for it.
So, I have been working on this project related to the disclosure laws for California, the SB 261, which is around climate risk disclosures. Mm-hmm. And the law basically goes into effect January 1, 2026.
Okay.
We found out 2 days ago that the Ninth District Court has put an injunction on it and is going to rule on it January 9th or something.
Wow, which means that nobody's going to be doing anything, right?
Nope.
Oh, jeez.
So we're currently do we stop? Does this not impact us anymore? Or is this just a delay, right? The deadline's going to be changed and it's going to be delayed. But it kind of gives you this essence of you're just trying to do your job. You're trying to make sure that people understand the climate risks are real, right? Everybody admits climate risks are real. They're changing their risk profiles, whether they're doing it internally and not talking about it, but they're starting to see the effects of wildfires. They're starting to see the effects of landslides. You're talking about inundated with rain. Mm-hmm. That may lead to landslides because the wildfire has taken away your root system. Yeah. And in the Northeast, we're going through a drought. Who figured the Northeast of the U.S. is going to run out of water? Nobody. Right. We are we have been told and taught in our school, in our, as I was going through my education, Northeast, you don't have to worry about the water. Now we do. We're going through a drought. So things like this, people already admit this is happening. But then you come across challenges such as people saying, well, the regulation basically puts forward a freedom of speech clause, saying that there are two regulations. One is around data. Mm-hmm. So SB 253 is about publishing your greenhouse gas emissions. That's going to be later on in the year. And the circuit court was like, yeah, data is it's you collect the data, you publish the data. Yeah. The argument for this one is that because you're telling us to talk about our risk, it's impeding on our free speech.
Oh, so you're telling us that we have to say something that we may or may not want to say.
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Well, so much for the transparency and traceability conversation that we always have in sustainability.
Right. And, it's not only transparency for the sake of transparency. People are making decisions whether they should invest in companies, whether they should invest in a certain region or in a certain project based on information that is being shared by them. Yeah. And if you're admitting climate risk is happening, why are you not disclosing about it? Why are you impeding this and thinking this is, this is a risk to your free speech? Mm. So this is how things are in the environment sustainability field right now, which is, one day you're like, okay, yay for California, yay for Newsom for pushing the envelope. He was great at COP30. Yeah, let's do this. And then then you have this hurdle and you're just like, okay, all right, how do we pivot? What do we do with this now? How do we change ourselves? And then who needs to be involved? And so it's like being constantly on your feet and constantly having to reassess your strategy.
Does it seem kind of par for the course? It seems like we do that, especially when it comes to regulation. Like you get down to a certain point, everybody kind of panics and starts moving in one direction. It's like, no, it's being delayed or it's being pushed back or there's an injunction. I mean, I feel like it's like CSRD with environmental reporting. We've heard it from, what was it? Like the S&P was doing the same thing or somebody was, right? We've had yes, no, which means basically leadership and companies are like, hey, we're just going to not do anything. Call us when you guys figure this out. Right? Is that how it's going?
It's unfortunately right now, that's what is happening, especially because of the pushback from the administration. Yeah. In the previous administration, the push was like, even if there's no clarity, do it.
Yeah,
right?
Okay,
There's money. People are looking to invest in this. People are really caring about how you invest in climate, invest in nature, invest in people. That there was a big drive towards it, and now all of a sudden everyone's like, all right, let's just take a step back, and we're not going to talk about it, because if we do, we may be in the limelight.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be in the limelight.
Right.
So
yeah.
that's unfortunately that's what has happened. And I feel like at some point we were very loud, right? Because we were like, people are starting to get it. People are starting to recognize this, and we need to do X, Y, and Z. But we were trying to push it really hard and fast. And the folks who, like it slow, let's say that, or don't want to change status quo, really pushed back. I don't think it was a matter of strategy, because we have to do it. We're already in a 2-degree hotter climate. If we don't do it now, we are going to be reaching a tipping point. And there are lots of studies that show that, right? Like there's a tipping point around nature. There's a tipping point around climate. There's a tipping point around glaciers melting. When can we stop saying it's going to be too costly? When can we stop saying that this is a separate issue? Again, remember, sustainability is in everything. You're putting things on.
Right.
Every decision you're making impacts sustainability, or how long we can live on this planet, right? Think about it that way. Reframe it to say, based on your decisions, you're deciding how long humans can exist on this planet. Because the planet's going to exist. It's just not going to exist for us.
Yeah.
Right? Where we can thrive.
Nobody likes to think that far out, though, right? And our business model is set up to look at quarterly earnings, not quarter century earnings, right? So, yeah, we sort of painted ourselves into a corner. I want to know, Monika, for you, and we've been sort of talking about this, high altitude kind of viewpoint. You've always been an environmentalist. You said you're doing this work. We're talking about 2 degrees, sort of managing our impacts. But maybe let's drill down a little for those that may not be as familiar with this space, and tell us, what does it mean to be a sustainability advisor? Tell us about the type of work you do in general, and maybe give us a little sense of what a day in the week or a month looks like for you at Ichcha, and tell us what does your work look like? What do you do as a sustainability professional?
Great. So, building on that visual exercise that we did, where I said sustainability is every decision making. So, as an advisor, it's really about taking any sector. So you can, if Ichcha is in the textile sector. If we look at our supply chain and look at where we're impacting and touching upon the resources, the people, the economy, where can we make sure that it's as effective and as efficient as possible, right? So the shirt I'm wearing is actually organic cotton, hand woven from the region of Gujarat, Western India, and it's indigenous to that area, because it's drought tolerant. So it is actually the most sustainable option that we can use in our whole supply chain. Then you come to things like scarves, where people like to have flimsy, soft mix of cotton and silk, and you're thinking about, okay, so where is that cotton coming from? Because it's not that thick, heavy organic cotton we have. Where is that silk coming from? And then, is it price appropriate? How can we get that into our supply chain? So this is one of our challenges. I don't know where this cloth is coming from. And this is a large part of our production run right now is a cotton silk mix. And that's the type of challenge that we are addressing. We go piece by piece along the supply chain. And similarly, another challenge, and this is something that Americans are going to relate to, Thanksgiving is coming up.
Yeah.
Black Friday sales. So as a sustainable company, my advice is we do not do Black Friday sales, because it's all about consumption, right? We're not about consumption. Our whole thing is about conscious consumption. So you buy it if you want, if you're going to wear it, right? If you really need it, you should buy it, not just for the sake of buying because it's on sale.
Yeah.
My sisters are.
Sort of harkening back to the old Patagonia ad, the Black
Yes.
Friday ad. Don't buy this jacket, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
are your sisters, are your business partners with you on that, or what's
No.
their thought? No.
They're like, we are so behind on our margins from last year. If you compare our revenues from last year, we're really behind this year. And the tariffs cut into our margins. So they're like, the Black Friday sales are one of the biggest. And we do the sale for about a week. And it's more about shopping small, right? So you're supporting a small business, and you're supporting a sustainable business along with that. And, we talk about the artisans we work with. So whose lives are you impacting by buying local?
Yeah.
And so we've had a whole conversation back and forth about this. But this is the type of challenge a sustainability advisor addresses, right? Like, how do you see the challenge from a sustainability perspective, and then you have a conversation and you come up with advice and strategy of how you move forward around it. And then it's also about communicating not only to your internal stakeholders, right? So my sisters, but also to external stakeholders, because we want them to be empowered enough to make that decision. So in the end, we decided, okay, so if we do this, we're going to have to change the way we communicate. And you're right, Patagonia's "Don't Buy This Jacket" was one of my inspirations, but we're basically going to focus more on the small business piece and talk about the artisans we work with.
Yeah, because there's, in a way, people are going to buy no matter what. We've conditioned them to do so. So in that way, well, let's try to get them to buy small and buy from, support artisans and sustainable business. So if you're going to spend your dollars, come buy from us, right? There's that. I like how you've painted it too with you and your sisters, because I know you're working in, sustainability often kind of links back to the triple bottom line. It's this balance of environmental impacts, social impacts, and and the business and the profits of the business. And so you've got your sisters representing the profit, you're representing the environment, you've got somebody representing the people, and together everybody comes together and says, hey, can we do a little bit of all of this to make sure it all works and all comes together, and that we can do this into the future. So it's a good example of the triple bottom line at work.
Yeah, and this is small. Then when you start working in bigger institutions, and you have to argue the case with a larger group of people and influence them. So the conversations are similar, but they're just framed in a little bit of a different dialogue, different keywords that you use.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying then too is, as a sustainability advisor in this role, you're constantly communicating, you're putting up some barriers and bumpers, you're a sounding board, you're kind of getting people to look at things a little bit differently and saying, hey, I get it, we're going to sell stuff, but can we do it in the best way possible? And it's a really important role. Well, Monika, you have a master's in environmental management, corporate responsibility and environmental management from the Yale School of the Environment. So you're well qualified in this space, but I started this show because I really love hearing about people's career journeys, how they got here. I'm really fascinated by all the stories of the lessons that we learn along the way. You said you've been an environmentalist since you were 15. So tell us a little bit about where all of this starts from the beginning. Maybe you had your eye on this line of work. You had your bachelor's in political science and environmental studies, but did you see yourself doing the work that you do now back then? Tell us how you got here. Rewind a little bit. Tell us the story.
Yeah. Well, as I was preparing for this dialogue, I felt like I had to do a lot of navel gazing, really think about where the roots come from. And I think a large piece of that is having lived in many different countries. So we came to America when I was 13. We came from Ethiopia, which was at that point just gone through that divide between Ethiopia and Eritrea and the civil war. And, and then I would go back home to India, where, my relatives still lived in neighborhoods where the sewage system was open. So you saw people's sewage right past by you.
Yeah.
And there were, of course, piles of garbage, right? But it just kind of, as a teenager, for me, it was just like, why is it that certain countries have a certain type of standard of living and others have a different one, and they're okay, like they're okay with it, right? They're making do. And for me, that was jarring. And I feel like that's kind of like what got me interested in this. Also, I want to credit my 8th grade and 9th grade earth sciences teacher, because I feel like he really brought up, the concept of the environment and global warming and so on. So I feel like that that really instigated my interest in all of this.
Yeah.
And you're right, like I've gone through quite a bit, but I started as an activist, really, because at the age of 15, I tried to organize the kids of the neighborhood in my uncle's neighborhood in India to clean up the neighborhood. And again, this is me 15 as I was 15 years old. And, I stood outside and I was talking to kids, and I would take their names and their phone numbers down. And then I called them up, and their parents got on the phone and they were like, "Who are you?
Wow.
Like, why are you doing this? And like, why are you coming into our country to do this?" And I was like, all right, this is not the right thing. Like, let me figure out what I'm going to do. So yeah, that was how I started as an activist. And then when I was in undergrad, I did earth science, environmental studies, but it was a geology program that was offering some environmental courses, because they basically hadn't committed to an environmental studies program. And most of my professors kept telling me to go to do a hard science like geology. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to look at rocks. I want to influence people in their decisions.
Yeah.
And I did political science because my dad was a diplomat, and he was like influencing me to go into international relations. So I was like, all right, political science makes sense. And then I joined NIPERG. So I don't know if you've heard of the PERGs, but they're basically an activist group that is present on public university campuses. So there was NIPERG is one of the largest groups. I think there's one in California as well. But basically, you organize students and help and give them the skills to organize around different issues, including education or financing for education. Environment was one of them. Other social impacts, and so there was a big. The better bottle bill was happening at that time, where New York was pushing for 5 cents back if you deposit your cans or bottles, and that was one of the things that I was helping organize while I was in undergrad. And so when I graduated, I went and worked with NIPERG in Queensborough Community College, and I had graduated from Queens College, so I went to Queensborough Community College, and then at Queens College as well. But basically, my roots are activism. It's all about how you empower people and get them energized, and to really have an impact on any issue. It can be social, it could be environmental, but you really have to empower people to voice their opinions.
Yeah, influence them, convince them, right? I mean, there's definitely that's an art, and there's a skill that's there, and it sounds like, which we just went over, you're still doing that as a professional in the space of just influencing huge. and convincing people. And when was it? So, tell me a little bit about, at what point did you decide to go back for your master's, and tell us about what was your first job like? When do you start getting into the workplace, and what are those early jobs like in this space?
NIPERG was my first job. After undergrad, it was my first job. The funny, sad story about NIPERG is that within the first week of us officially starting the job, 9/11 happened. And we were, my cohort at that time, we were 3 blocks away from the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And we went through this traumatic experience together, which kind of like shifted how people interacted with each other, right? It really changed how New York behaved with especially brown Asians and immigrants. And it was it was another one of those periods, like it's happening now, right? All this immigration issues that are happening here kind of resonates and reminds me of what was happening in New York way back when. And so that was my first job. But 3 years into that, I decided, okay, it's time for a master's degree because activism was not getting the change I wanted. It was good because you can empower people to do it, but they're decision makers up there.
Yeah.
And you don't always have access to the decision makers. And so I wanted to then figure out how do I upskill myself to get there.
Right.
And that's when I went to Yale, and my focus was industrial ecology, which, now is called circular economy. But basically, industrial ecology looks at just industry, so a series of industries, and says, how do you make an ecosystem out of that? How do you take the waste of one, put that as an input for another to minimize and to close the loop system to minimize and be more efficient with our resources.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's circular economy, right?
Yes.
And so that's what I studied. And my master's thesis was on water issues now I'm trying to remember this. It was Coca-Cola's use of water resources in India, because at that time they were being challenged by the communities in India because they were really pumping out the water a lot and to make their bottling system. And so that was my thesis based on industrial ecology, corporate responsibility, and sustainability.
Huh. And then you end up taking that, you kind of take that work and that degree over to the World Bank? Is that what you go?
So it took a while.
It did?
Yes. And as an immigrant, I did have to deal a lot with visa issues, right? So as I was leaving Yale, I had the student visa, which is valid for a year. So you can do a practical here for a year with somebody. Okay. At that point, I had not secured myself a job. It took me a while to get something, and it was a cement company in Europe. And they were looking for somebody who can help them with their environmental impact, but in India. So they were like, okay, so you can come over, work with us in Europe, and then you can go over to India. It became a short-term project. They shifted their decision in the end. So I had to come back here. And my visa was ending. My family's here. And, we didn't want to, like I said, we're close-knit family. And so if I had to go back to India, they would be very depressed without me.
Of course. Yeah. Yes.
So I was very lucky that my dad had a diplomatic visa, and he was able to keep me on as a dependent. Okay. So I acknowledge from the top, I come from a place of privilege. My parents are very close to me. So my parents have stepped in and supported me anytime I didn't have a job. And my dad at that time had a way to support me on a visa basis. So while I was looking for a job, I was, a dependent on him. I did get some part-time jobs within the UN system, which gives you, a diplomatic visa to allow you to work here. But it took a while, and there was a company that I was working with, which was a startup. But again, working on sustainability, they were willing to sponsor me for my work visa. But I was working with them for about a year while the process was going on. And in the end, for me, I really want to work with people who believe in sustainability and actually walk the talk. Yeah. So if you're working in sustainability, you should be walking the talk. And they were not. So I was not happy. And when I found out about this World Bank position and I got invited to do an interview, I basically had to give up my work visa with this private company and take on a diplomatic visa with the World Bank. Again, these were decisions coming from a place of privilege, because I was able to decide that, okay, in the long term, if I want to stay in the US, I will find another way to secure myself a visa option within the US.
Okay.
Not everybody has this opportunity. A lot of immigrants are looking for a more permanent, permanent way to stay in the US. And so their career decisions are based on that. For me, I was able to move around a little bit because of these, privileged position that I come from. But that's to say, I do want to mention two things. One, how I got to the World Bank. I had a friend who was talking to another friend. They were both classmates. And one said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone." And the other said, "Hey, have you spoken to Monika? She's looking for something too." So it really is about making sure that you're networking.
About the network, yes.
That's how I got this.
Yes.
Even though they kind of knew me from before, but when I went into interview, the manager was impressed with me and really she had to talk me into taking the job, because I was like, I should finish this, get my permanent work visa within the US. And she's like, no, you want to work for the World Bank. And I was like, okay, fine. I want to work for the World Bank. Yeah. So I went from protesting the World Bank to actually working for the World Bank.
Oh, funny.
But I think a lot of the people that I was surrounded by in the environment unit came from that perspective of saying, how do we help the World Bank do a better job at sustainable development? And so that place really helped me understand how do you take the impact to an international level, and how do you really influence the decision makers, everyone from the state to the sovereign level to international level. And so I do want to emphasize that it was a long journey, but it basically took me from activism to influencing people on the international level.
Well, Monika, let's take a quick break, because when I want to dive deeper into that, I want to hear, it sounds like the World Bank was really transformational for you and a really important experience sort of in your professional development. I would imagine that, your college experience, your network. So I want to just sort of hear maybe sort of what the biggest takeaways from that experience were, some of the highlights, maybe the challenges of that whole process that you just told us about as well. So hang tight. We'll come right back. I'll ask you some more questions, and then I want to get some advice that you might have for career builders. So we'll take a quick break. Excellent. And we'll be right back. Talking with professionals like my guest today is always inspiring, and a reminder that more of us need foundational sustainability knowledge so we can help our brands and companies continue to grow and profit in the most sustainable way. What do you think? Does your team have the confidence and competence to work in and contribute to this exciting space? I often find that the answer is, well, not yet. That's why, after more than a decade deep in the sustainability profession, I developed a set of courses and trainings to do just that. The School of Understanding is a self-paced online sustainability course made for professionals and brands who want to catch up and keep up with the expectations of today's marketplace. If you're not fluent in the language of sustainability yet, you're falling behind. So let's fix that. Enroll yourself or your team now and get caught up in the exciting opportunities that are being created in sustainable and profitable business. All right, well, we're back. Monika, right before the break, you were, telling us just about the experience at the World Bank, transition in there. You learn a lot. You sort of learn, I guess, maybe the trade of dealing with what you do now, kind of blending international development, programmatic sustainability, et cetera. So,
yes.
What were the biggest takeaways from that World Bank experience?
Network. Having a community is huge. Sustainability professionals, I feel like in the as foundation, or we're very value driven people. We come into this because we want to make a difference, because we want to change things, and most of the sustainability professionals I came across, they were collaborative. They were very open to have conversations, and they were very open to sharing how they got through their struggles. And so I think one of the key things that I took away from my experience in the last 20 years is that you need to have a community around you of these type of people who are doing either similar things or better things than you are, because you're going to learn from them and because you're going to rely on them. And I'll give an example of that. So here in DC, we have a couple of really strong sustainability networks. One is called SMRT, Sustainability Managers, and I don't know the whole acronym, but it's coordinated by the sustainability person at WRI and a few other organizations around DC.
Okay.
They meet monthly, tackling issues that sustainability professionals have to tackle every single day in their job. So, for example, right now they're talking about Scope 3 emissions. This is more open to like the nonprofit organizations and the multilateral development organizations, because we're kind of nonprofit as well. The group comes together once a month to talk about this on a technical level. There's another group called DC Sustainability Luncheon, which is a more informal way of gathering people and picking their brain. And it's Chatham House rule, right? So you basically cannot tie people who said what, basically.
Yep.
And this is hosted by any organization that's part of this group can say, I have a challenge that I need to address. Can I host the next lunch? And they present the challenge that they need advice on, and everybody just kind of brainstorms and says, okay, have you considered this? This is how it worked in my, so it's really 10 people that are your advisors.
Yeah.
I feel like that's been a huge part of my support structure in this job, how I have learned to push the boundaries and also maintained what is relevant, right? So you can't, at least I can't, read myself, read a gazillion things every single day, because there's so many new things are developing. So You really need to identify the people who have done something already that you're trying to tackle now, or have addressed a challenge, and this is the way to do it. I would say this has been the biggest learning for me, and it's not mind-boggling, but it is something that I think people have to be, again, if you're getting into this field, just talk to sustainability professionals, talk to them, create a network, build that community.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. It's a good point. And you mentioned earlier, too, that you got into that work with the World Bank because you saw an opportunity to learn how to influence leaders. So as you're working collaboratively with peers, what's your approach for influencing leadership? Do you feel like you've been able to sort of break that, break into that, break that code? Or what's the hack there to really influence leaders in organizations?
I love this question because as I was prepping for this, I tapped into my network and I said, hey, this is one of the questions that we're going to be talking about. What's your idea? And the response I got was, you have to approach it from their perspective, and it's always going to be the financial argument. You have to talk about it from an ROI perspective. You have to talk about it from what do they get out of this? Like, what's in it for them, right? That hasn't changed. And it's the case for anything that you would do in a company, but for sustainability, again, coming as a professional, as an environmentalist, like, we live in a world where the IMF published a report that quantified the cost of a whale. How do you quantify a whale? How do you quantify the value of a mangrove, right? Like, I'm sorry, but this is the world we live in, and this is what it means to talk to leaders. Is you have to put a value on everything that you're doing. It's kind of like what insurance companies are doing. They value a human being's life, right? And now we're starting to value nature, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and so, as unfortunate as it is, you have to be very good at CEO speak. So what's in it for them? How do you quantify this? And, how do you make this tangible in their language based on what they care about right now?
Yeah, and most often the language that they're speaking is the bottom line, right? We talked about it earlier, even in your small family business, it's revenue and profit. I mean, that's the name of the game. So Really good point. That's really interesting. I want to know too, then, when it comes to sustainability and the work that you're doing and leadership, from your perspective, I think you've sort of laid this out a little bit already, but why for companies that are like, we're really not doing anything, do you sort of have a pitch to them for why social impact or sustainability is so important and why it needs to be on their radar, especially right now? Even in a time when it's like, yeah, but I don't really have to do that right now. I'm not getting the same pressure that I once was.
Yeah. Let me put on my little advisor hat, right?
Okay, yeah.
So a couple of things. Gen Z. The newer generation really cares about the environment. They really care about what you do and how you behave towards other people, towards the environment, and towards the communities. If you want to attract smart, diligent people, you need to make sure that you are speaking their language. And one of the ways to do that is to talk about how you are operating in a sustainable manner. Because again, they're the next generation that's going to stay here longer than you are. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that they have a, good life. Newer generation, make that matter. Second of all, consumers care. I mean, they can't always price point it, like they can't always afford to be sustainable, but most studies show that consumers care. Yeah. They may not be able to put the money down right now. Yeah, so you do have to talk a little bit about how do you prioritize what you do, and that's totally valid, right? So what's the most material things to your business based on your supply chain, based on your impact that you should work on? And if by doing that, you will change the way that you operate. Similarly, if you're going after your consumers or you're addressing or attracting certain type of consumers, you're saying, what do they care about? In an institution like the World Bank, our biggest impact is our investments. What did our staff care about? How did we recycle?
Yeah.
So you have to think about what's material and who your audience is.
Right. Yeah.
And while the pressure was not there for us to track emissions from our investments, there was pressure for us to track how we are sorting and addressing our waste management.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it goes back to the communications and making sure that you're speaking to the right audience in the right language that they expect from you. So you mentioned consumers, Gen Z, next generation. Any other things that you want to throw in there?
I mean, I have a lot of ideas.
The list is long.
The list is long, but it depends on, again, the sector you're talking to, the type of company you're talking to, and who, what's their biggest pain point. So, one of the things that you and I brainstormed a little bit about was how we're defining sustainability and measuring sustainability essentially, right? So, I can say, all right, my company reduced 100 tons of carbon emissions this year. That's good?
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean? Yeah, right.
Is it Ichcha or is it Unilever, right? So which company is it? What is your jar of carbon emissions that you should be emitting? And then off that, what did you tackle? And so metrics are really not aligned with how we're measuring emissions right now or measuring anything in sustainability right now. So I would say, like, if a company is saying, well, we do enough, I would say, but what is enough? So let's start defining what is enough. What does it mean for you to be a sustainable institution? Can you put a denominator on those metrics that you're publishing right now? Because by talking about what is enough, the bottom denominator, you're telling me more in terms of the context within which you're working. And so I would put those three things, which is, it's about your employees, it's about your communities or consumers, and it's about how you are defining what is sustainable for you. And I think that those three things, I would package that.
Yeah, no, that's nice. Okay, good. That's a good way. Good sales pitch, if you will. Let's shift over a little bit. I want to start kind of getting to the point where I get some advice from you. We start to wrap this up and give leave some young career builders with advice. But I do want to know for you, I mean, you've got a degree from Yale School of the Environment. How important was your college experience to you? And I always like to preface this with the fact that I think a lot of young people today are wondering if they should go down the college route, if it's for them, is it worth it? So how important was it to you? Still worth it? What do you tell them?
Good question. So, in diversity, one of the diversity indicators within the World Bank was to diversify the type of institutions that we were looking at when people sent in their resumes. Because if their resume said Yale, Harvard, Stanford, like the top tier, they were a shoo-in. If it was anything else, they were not.
Okay.
And diversity, and our diversity program tackled that head on and said, just because somebody didn't go to a good institution doesn't mean that they're not smart enough, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you can't make that as a criteria for justifying your selection. And that's to say, employers are looking at your university, that you have a degree. You have to have a master's degree to get into the World Bank, the UN, and certain organizations. So without that, forget about it. Even if you're the smartest kid on the block, the minimum you have to meet is you have to have a university degree.
They want to see
have to have a master's degree. You have to have a PhD if you want to get to certain levels. It's very hard to rise in ranks in the institution if you don't have a PhD. Wow. And so again, it depends on which organization you're going to apply to and whether they really look at your qualifications. I don't know what I was listening to recently where they talked about, the advice that billionaires give to each other. And they were like, well, they talk about upskilling all the time. They talk about how do you really gain certain skills and focus on certain skills. And so I feel like, okay, you don't want to go to, you're applying for, I don't know, a career where you don't need a degree. But you need to get that skill somehow. Is it through a certification? Are you going through some sort of an internship? Because you are learning from others, it can be in any context, but it is important. And my experience, again, I was an immigrant. I, decided to go to a city university for my undergrad because that's the most affordable way for me to acquire the degree. But then when I came to Yale, again, the way I could afford it is through scholarship. But it opened so many doors. I would not have gotten into the World Bank without this. I would not have gotten into so many conversations without a degree, a master's degree. And yes, Yale opened the doors. So yes, there's something to say about the weight of the name. Yeah. But even without that, you can qualify yourself as having a master's degree from any university, as long as you're smart enough to talk about it, right? You have an internship, you have some experience under the belt. That was the other thing. So, okay, in preparation for this, I kind of put out the call to my network and I said, give me ideas of what to tell people. So a couple of things came up. One, yes, go to school. Two, but you can go to any school in terms of, internship, whatnot, right? Some sort of a structured format that you're learning. Yep. I would say undergrad is okay to go to any school. You don't really need a big name for your undergrad, but note the type of programs that they're offering. So really understand what you're getting for your money. Okay. The second thing I would say, you do need experience. You need experience. When you start applying and you're fresh off undergrad, if you don't have some sort of volunteer experience in the field that you want to go into, if you haven't volunteered with your green teams and your, sustainability programs in your universities, you're less likely to get selected. Interesting. If you have that experience, if you have gone out of your way to engage in that field within which you want to work, you're more likely to get selected.
Okay. Yeah. So get involved.
Get involved. And so experience matters a lot.
Yeah.
Universities matter, but experience matters a lot. The third thing I would say is, again, network, right? So talk to people. Even if you're saying, hey, I just want advice. I'm not looking for a job. I just want to know what do you do day to day? What are the skills I need? Do that. And then fourth is something that I'm learning now, as I'm going through my transition, upskilling all the time. Like things have changed now. And you and I touched upon this when we were talking previously, which is, the field was so different. Like CSR, sustainability used to be called CSR.
Yeah.
It used to be called industrial ecology, brand new terms. And now we are here and, like every other person is talking about sustainability.
Yeah.
And, it's commonplace now that there are universities with these curriculums. It wasn't the case 20 years ago.
That's right.
So the field has changed, but look at what is the technical skill that you want to work on. So you might be interested in understanding supply chains within the leather industry. You really care about leather. You really care about, purses. Go into that. You can touch upon sustainability from that angle. You care about numbers. You really care about data. You really care about accounting. All right, you can do accounting and sustainability.
Yeah.
You really, really, really care about art. Well, you can talk about art and sustainability. What are you doing with the paints and there's
communications, right?
Communications is another one, right?
Yes.
And so you can find that niche, but you have to constantly upskill because things are changing. There are new standards. There's new exemplary examples out there or case studies that you should know about. Or in the case for me, I've been working in climate and sustainability for so long, but the technical skill that I was missing is scenario analysis. So for climate risk, within the climate risk framework, there are many new tools out there to help you plan out how your company is going to fare within a 2-degree climate, within a 4-degree climate, like what's going to be the impact on your company.
Right.
And that has progressed in the past 5-10 years so much. So I dived in and I basically was like, how do I acquire that skill now as a professional? Because that's a very specific skill, but it's necessary when you talk about how do you create resilience in your company, how do you create resilience in your community or in your country. So when people are now pivoting from talking about, well, it's not just about sustainability, it's about resilience. What does that look like? How do you really map it out? How do you create that impact, right? You need the number, you need the data, and that comes from scenario analysis.
Yeah, interesting. I think this whole time, I would say in this space, for those of us that have been in it, you're constantly having to evolve and learn. So I really appreciate that you're adding that in to always be upskilling, always keeping an eye on where this is going. And you're right, sustainability went from this sort of general one sort of green team department that we're tackling everything to now being very specialized and very technical in some cases. And there are a lot of different branches of it. So it's an exciting space to be in. Monika, let's start to wrap things up here. I want to ask you maybe as you look back, what are the biggest takeaways for you? What have been the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way? You've had a lot of times where you've had to, be resilient and bounce back and persevere and get through things. I'll throw this in there as well and kind of combine this question with it. I call it the underswell. I always think there's something for all of us that's sort of underneath the surface that drives us, that keeps us going. So talk to me about some of the biggest lessons that you've learned. What's your underswell? What keeps you going every day and keeps you in this line of work?
I would say 2 things. One is every action or conversation we're having on sustainability is influencing somebody. And it may not seem like it, but it is. I bumped into someone recently and they were like, oh, we still recycle. We carry our cans around and recycle because of you. And I was like,
yeah, hey.
I don't remember when we had this conversation, but okay, thank you. That's great. And he's like, yeah, we do beach cleanups. And I was like, oh, okay. Every conversation matters. And this may not have an impact right away, but understand you're making a difference because you're talking about it. Second of all, I would say And this comes from again, the conversation I was having with friends is about creating, being resilient yourself, creating a way to ensure your own resiliency in the sustainability field. It is a constant, you're pushing the rock up the hill because you're changing people's behavior, and you're telling people a life of convenience is no longer going to happen, and every decision you're making for convenience has an impact somewhere else. So you're really trying to change people's everyday life. So at some point, it's going to add up because you keep pushing the rock up the hill. So how are you being resilient? What are you doing to protect yourself?
Yeah.
Because just because you're not seeing the action right away doesn't mean it's not having an impact, but it's different from your energy, right? So like, I feel like maybe I'm not defining it right, but I feel like for sustainability professionals, you need to know that you need to preserve your energy, and you need to have a way of protecting yourself as well.
Yeah. Personal sustainability, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. What's your Underswell? What do you think drives all of this? What makes you who you are, and what makes you want to show up for this work? What's the thing?
My family. For me, it's my family. For me, it's the fact that I want, I want India I want to walk down the street in India one day when we're not talking about air pollution. That is my Underswell. That is that is the one thing that drives me every single day, is like, how do I get my country back to a path of sustainability?
I love that. I love that it ties. I mean, you opened with that scenario of painting that picture of what it was like when you were growing up. So that's really special. Well, let's close this up, Monika. I'll give you I call it the open mic session, where the last few minutes here are yours to kind of take it wherever you want. I know I'd kind of said, hey, maybe there's 3 things that you want people to remember, advice that you've got for people that want to get into this space, or just acknowledgments, shout outs, call outs, apologies, whatever you want. Wrap us up with sort of the final wrap up here, and then I'll let you get back to it. So take it away. The mic is yours.
Thanks. First of all, thank you for having me and giving the space. I want to thank everybody who kind of chimed in when I send them the questions. So my network of my resilience advisors. And then this Thanksgiving, this Christmas, think about what's your local shop, what's your small shop. Can you change the way that you're impacting your decisions? So think now, because you don't want to last minute shop Amazon. Shop small. And then I would also say there are a couple of books I want to tell people about.
Yeah, great.
One is The Ministry for the Future. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's basically it reads like a fiction book, but it uses the current technologies and a future where we're already living on a 4-degree planet. So it's really interesting. The first chapter gave me PTSD, so just go with that warning. The second book I would say is, if you're into fantasy, it's called Blood Over Brighthaven. And it is it is just kind of reflecting on this message that I've tried to parlay, which is, what's the cost of convenience? I'm going to just leave you with that, because it's not about, it doesn't hit you until the very end, and you're just kind of like, what happened? So those 2 books I would recommend.
Well, thanks for that. I'll put the links to those in the show notes. I'm going to put the link to, your profile, your work, to Ichcha in there.
Thank you.
I'm going to put the link to your Black Friday sale, because I know we're going to get it. The reminder to shop small. Whatever you got from me, we'll direct people your way. Monika, thank you so much. Thank you for the work that you're doing, the thoughtful way that you approach business, and the impact that you're really trying to have, and I think are having in the space and in the world. I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of us do. So thank you for sharing some insights and some wisdom and some stories, and enjoy the holiday season. Don't work too hard. Personal sustainability.
Thank you so much. Personal sustainability. Exactly.
All right, Monika. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what you heard, be sure to check back weekly, subscribe to the show, and if you want to be featured on the show, come hit us up at theunderswell.com. We'd love to hear from you.